Hi, everybody, and welcome to Real Siblings. It Ain't Easy, a real estate podcast that just ain't typical. I just asked Eric what number we're on because he knows numbers, and this is our 52nd podcast. So I'm Donna, he is Eric, and we are the Real Siblings. We are both professional realtors with Keller Williams, and Eric is in Texas, I'm in Arizona. And what really matters is that people think we're like twins, only 7 years apart. And today we're going to talk about how we're exactly alike and yet different, exactly the same and different. So the podcast blends lifestyle together with real estate as we do work to communicate, educate, connect, and entertain our listeners. The topics vary. We go in a lot of different directions, and we do hope to provide you with insights into the industry, which will better equip you for your next real estate transaction. So Eric and I have talked just a little bit beforehand, like we always do. And as I alluded to, actually told you, we're going to talk about how we do things exactly the same, only different. Eric.
Right. Exactly the same, only different. Hey, we can't even say that what's the line for guys? Brother from another mother.
Yeah,
But that would be inaccurate in many ways.
that's true. Because we are from the same mother.
But if you met our other siblings, and there are two more, we have mentioned them in the past, you would know that Donna and I are much closer aligned mentally,
The way we,
philosophically, maybe
yeah, than the other ones.
than my older brothers, her older, her younger.
Yeah, it's very confusing. I'm already confused. Yeah.
Well, good. And then what we're talking about is we realized, because I had sent her some information during the week about working with some new clients, and she's like, wow, I do the same thing, only not even close.
Yeah.
And it comes down to the fact that if you recall in previous episodes, we try to, all of us as real estate agents, try to differentiate ourselves from our competitors. What makes us different? Why do you want to work with us as opposed to somebody else? And one of the biggest parts when you first meet somebody and start working with them is to identify what they're looking at.
Right.
And you got to have some questions, some idea beyond the basic, hey, I'm looking for a 3-2. We've mentioned that before in previous episodes too, that is just so common, but there's so many more things that go into it. So I'd hold up forms, but if you're listening, you're not going to see those anyhow. And because of the background I chose to put together today for the video portion of this, I'm kind of blending in and out. My beard looks really stunningly white. But the forms come down to the fact that mine is a series of columns and check boxes, whereas Donna's is a free-flowing questionnaire, ... Give me a happy answer.
That is correct. Actually, Eric, so we sent them to each other when we realized we were kind of doing the same thing. And when I opened yours, I laughed because I was like, oh, this is like MLS data entry. And we have already talked about how our brains, in so many ways, we remember things the same, but you do things in a much more numerical and detailed format than I do. And mine's almost exclusively verbal. Like everything's an open-ended question with maybe you circle a word, but yours is check boxes, right?
And I think part of it is the reason I have the check boxes there is because I actually sent you two forms, remember?
You did, yeah.
One of them is what I use, and I call it my needs and wants. And having the conversation, this gives me the opportunity to have a conversation and say, okay, look, there's needs. You need a kitchen. And there are wants. I want an island kitchen. I want an island kitchen with the sink in the island, or I want an island kitchen with the cooktop in the island. Those are wants,
Right.
Different from needs.
Right.
So I have that conversation. And then part of mine too includes, look, what do you consider to be 3 non-negotiables?
Okay.
And I ask if it's a single individual, obviously they get to pick. But if it's partners in any way, guess what? Guaranteed you're having at least 4, if not 6 different things which are non-negotiable, 3 for each of those parties. So it needs to be a 2-car garage. Why does it need to be a 2-car garage? Because we don't plan on parking our garages, but I work on cars, so I have to have room for my tools and my whatever, non-negotiable.
Right.
And it goes from there. Yours
Yeah,
is a little bit more free flowing.
it is. It is more, mine's more like picking your topics to write a paper, tell me, there's still some criteria given. Some of my questions are what's small, like the minimum you would take, and what's too big, and what's the minimum price, that you want, and what's the maximum, things like that. But what you just said about needs and wants, when I'm driving around with a buyer in the car, or they're driving separately and meeting me, I have told them they can never have more than 3 for a day. So that number 3, we might look at 6 houses or 7 or 8, but I always say to them, if you have to choose today, you're leaving at 5 o'clock, you're flying back, and the next time you're here, you're going to be in a home that you bought. You can only have 3 this evening to choose from. Because if you take all 6 or 8 that we just looked at, you won't decide. You will not be able to choose. And Eric, to your point, the needs and wants thing, I don't know that I address it exactly the same way, but I say, what are your 5 non-negotiable?
Okay, so you give them 5.
Yeah.
I try to whittle it down to 3.
Yeah.
What I did think in looking at your form, and this is probably due to lifestyle and neighborhoods more common out in Tucson
Right.
than they are here in San Antonio,
Right.
are the gated communities.
Yeah.
Do you feel like are a lot of your newer subdivisions gated?
Yes. So I have some buyers that were referred to me from Connecticut. I may or may not have already mentioned that to you today. And I looked at 2 homes for them. Those 2 homes were within a mile of each other, and both of them were in gated communities, and they are newer. When I say newer, 2010 and 10, even more than that. They were newer than that. But part of that is that in that little area, that region, the homes were closer together, but that particular part of our city requires that a third of it stay green space. So both of them had open fencing behind, both of them had pools. The green space was behind and wouldn't be built on. So they have some nice views, but you got to be okay with your neighbor being close, which you remember where Gil and I lived the first time you came here. Those were what? You could practically shake hands out the window in that subdivision.
Yeah, were they 8 foot apart?
Yeah,
10 foot.
4 feet and 4 feet. Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
As I recall where the fence line was.
Yep. That's correct. And so, and we had a road behind our backyard, and then trees, and you could kind of see the mountains out the back. But that becomes a thing. Some people, there's no way. None of my brothers, none of you guys want to live that close to anybody. Ken and Elizabeth now are a little bit closer where they just bought in Illinois. But even then, with great big trees and fences and things that protect you and shade you from the neighbors where you can't see them.
Right.
Yeah.
The other one that I think, because we have talked in previous episodes about snowbirds.
Yeah.
And the fact that you have a lot more of that.
Yes.
Than I do.
Yep.
And so one of your questions is, will you live here year round? I just automatically assume, probably incorrectly, that you're here. You're not, it's not even, if it's going to be temporary, you will tell me that.
That's interesting. So have you sold to anyone who's not there year round?
Nope. 10 years, not a single one.
And I have my clients that are here from Norway right now, and I have clients that come from Quebec, and I have clients that come from Edmonton in the outside of Calgary.
Yep.
Yeah, and they're all seasonal. They're and not even long seasons until they retire. they're 6 weeks or 2 or 3 weeks, 3 or 4 times a year. So
And what do they do with the house during the rest of the time?
it sits vacant. And depending on the neighborhood, they have a neighbor who flushes the toilets and just goes in and checks on it. And yeah, because otherwise it dries up in the house.
I'm gonna go use your commode, okay? Once every other month.
Yeah, or right now, like they're not here, most of them. The couple from Norway are, because this is when they get a break, because she's a teacher.
Okay.
But most of them are not going to be here during monsoon season. So a neighbor will be watching the house and saying, "Hey, you had a branch fall," that kind of thing, and then they'll have somebody take care of it. But all three of those particular clients are in communities that are gated, that have pools, but that they don't maintain them.
Okay, so do those two go together then? Are people who are more likely to be temporary residents more likely to buy a gated community? So there's a certain level of security. I know coming back and forth from my house that I'm there every single day.
Right.
Someone doesn't look at it and go, wow, there's been nobody at that house. But if there's a gate that someone has to get through, it's a little more challenging to determine
Yeah.
the status of that house.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. No. Absolutely. And I will tell you that of those, one of them is in the subdivision where I just bought my condo last year. So I'm going to see them tomorrow, because they're just 4 or 5 buildings down from where my condo is. But 2 of them are electronically operated with gate codes. One of them is, even as a realtor, when I go, I have to show my card to get in. So different levels of security. Yeah. Where I have to say where I'm going to, what home I'm going to, and prove that I'm a real estate agent.
And they can log you in. So you have a printed version of your license, so you can prove that you're.
Actually, I just show them my real license, or I show them a business card. And even if I'm just driving there on my own, let's just say I'm driving around because I'm thinking about moving into that subdivision, you still have to totally identify that you've been there before, so that they know every person who has come in and out of the subdivision.
Okay.
So
The other one that I'm noticing is your active adult community and golf course.
Yeah. That's funny that.
So now I'm curious, we need to know for a future episode, how many golf courses you have per capita?
Oh, Eric, that's a mathematical equation.
Because that to me seems like you're going to have a much lower number.
A lower
number meaning you're going to have more golf courses per capita than I would.
Oh, absolutely.
So we're going to be one in 10,000, 20,000, and you're going to be one in 1,000.
I don't know. I would need to go through all of the communities, and to be honest, some of them have closed, and there's a couple that have become great walking paths and things like that. They've reconfigured the use of them if there were 2 golf courses that were too close together, and they weren't all getting used. But the other thing about that, Eric, is in the desert, if you're near a golf course and you look out to a golf course, you see green. So in a place where it's not always green, and my vision of green has changed through the years, right?
Oh yeah, what's green and what's not green.
Right. So that's why I think when I went back to Illinois in the spring, I was like, it's so green, because it was really green. It was that vibrant spring green, and we don't get that as much. So the golf courses provide that and give you that little idea.
That's interesting. And then you had said that even though you have this printed out, this is something you provide to them only if you're not going to.
Yep. I don't give that.
You don't use it as a template for your discussion.
No, not if 90% of my business is referral. A large percentage is referral. If they're already in Tucson and I already know they're in Tucson, they already know things about the city that I don't have to ask them that are on that document. if they're out of town, like this couple that's coming from Connecticut, first of all, you all, I have to tell you, it still has a fax number on it that isn't any good anymore. And it's not PDF fillable because I am not technical enough to have made it PDF fillable. So on the last one, this couple that's coming from Connecticut, they printed it out. He read her the questions and she typed the answers and sent it to me. and but they were able to say a lot. They had been here. They had an idea of where they wanted to be. They knew that they were retiring and they didn't have to drive to the base, even if they might go to the base periodically because the discounts at the BX, and stuff like that. So
okay, so a lot of your questions up front are what I consider to be lifestyle, right?
Yeah.
So your note about city lights. How far out do you have to be to not have city lights at this point? Because I've been remote where I've lived now for 22 years. And I can tell you when we first moved out here, our skies were much less lit by ambient light from the city than it is now.
Yeah.
It was easier to see meteors, shooting stars. You could even at the right time of day, you can watch the satellites go overhead because they're still catching setting sun somewhere around the horizon, but it's dark enough that you can see them straight lining it across the sky. And it's like, okay, that's a satellite.
We have a ton of those. Elon Musk is launching so many from California right now that they're going across our sky constantly. So he's out down there pushing a button doing it, but we still have laws that don't allow a lot of lights. So you don't have to go very far out. You know where I live, and I am within a mile of major groceries, all the stores, all the gas stations, all the doctors. And I do not have a street sign that is lit at La Cagnotte at the entrance closest to my house. It is dark as dark can be at night. And I'm in town. I put in air quotes for those of you that aren't watching, that are listening. So you don't have to go very far. And if you're in the foothills of the Catalinas, good luck knowing where you're going, because it's not a grid up there and it's dark. So because of all of our telescopes, because of all the optics work, we still have beautiful night skies that we can see.
So when you're saying, if someone says they don't mind the city lights, is it that kind of question?
No,
they don't mind it, or they don't want it?
No, more if you're sitting on the mountains, depending on how your house is positioned, you can look down and see the city lights. If you're high up on the hill, you can see all the city around you, or you can't. And north, south, east, west, you can decide, would I rather be seeing the mountains behind me or the city in front of me? And where my friend Beth bought, she can see a little of both. But it's way more, her backyard is the one that looks down, which is lovely at night because you can see the city lights, and the house below her is low enough that when they decorated for Christmas, it was like you were looking, like they decorated for her, like right up the hill. So that's what I mean by the city lights, not related to like street lights. And you've been up Mount Lemon when you were here?
Yes.
Okay. So think about that drive down, how you can sit there and see the whole city. There are people that want that view.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So you mentioned backyard, and that made me think that you had already mentioned monsoon. And I just, let's chase that squirrel a minute.
Okay.
You've had some crazy weather.
Oh my gosh.
And a lightning strike.
Yes, we had a tornado. They called it a tornado. I don't even know. There's probably history somewhere that somebody shared when the last tornado was that came through. What's interesting to me, Eric, because I do so much on social media, I put that little teeny video from my backyard. It was 8 seconds long and it's been seen 2,500 times, mostly because people can't believe it happened, I'm sure. And because they're like, 8 seconds. I've had people say, where was that? As if I went to somebody else's house to do that. I don't know. It was just funny.
And it was only like a week before that you had the lightning strike and the tree that's in part of the HOA property
Yes,
fell.
yes, the one behind my house had yeah. And today they were out there cutting it up at the crack of dawn. The landscapers were here cutting that branch up. And I was grateful we didn't lose another piece in the storm.
And was that a Palo Verde or what was
Yes,
that?
that was a Palo Verde.
Okay, that's what I was thinking you had out there.
What we did have, and I'm not, I don't want to ever make light of it, but we weren't what happened in Houston where they were without power for a week, people and stuff like that. But the line to where you take trees and branches to get them mulched was over a mile long with trucks. And the zoo was asking that we bring branches and things down because they can feed the elephants and stuff. So they were saying, if you are close to in town and have trees and branches, please bring them to us. And we can use them here, which to me was a great solution for somebody in town. But I have a friend who had a trampoline blow from a neighbor's house into theirs, knock over a cactus fell and hit the wall. Like, what was that?
Wow.
Mouse trap.
All right. So I've asked you questions about your form. Was there anything aside from the format or structure of mine that stuck out to you, like your city light question or?
No, and that I didn't look at it as closely. But so what I do remember looking at, and which made me laugh, was one of them at the very beginning. It was like the bedrooms, how many numbers? And they were check the box. And how many did you offer them? Did you offer them up to 6 or more bedrooms, or like?
Yes.
Yeah. See, I don't do that. It's either 3 or 4 or more, but or you can write in if you have to have 6, but that's so few and far between in the people that buy here that.
Well, and some of it, does your multiple listing service allow you to search on room sizes?
Okay, the answer is probably no. There's many changes happening, and to be honest, 100% honest for the listeners, I've been doing this 19 years and I can get stuck in a rut. So I can look the same way every time. And if somebody asks me for something unique, like island in the kitchen, it's not something we typically put in. It might be in the notes somebody writes, but in the description, but I've never entered a listing where I put in kitchen island. And if
okay.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, and if I did, our MLS is now allowing more and more. Like in the kitchen, you can check 15 things if you want, or whatever the number is. I have always found it interesting, the categories that they allow a higher number of compared to a lower number of. And most people don't search by words. Most people go into MLS. They want to know the 3 bedrooms, the 2 bath, how many bathrooms, square footage, single story, 2-story. There's really generic across the board.
Right.
Things.
And of course, I think some of that has to do with, even though there's fields there, if you pick a field that someone says, look, I absolutely have to have this, you can let them know, because of our experience, that it's like, well, you're only going to see 2 options.
Right. 2 houses.
Because there are only 2 agents in the city who actually fill that block in. And if that's what we're looking for,
yeah,
you are going to exclude everybody else who had an agent who didn't feel that detail was important when they were putting their listing into the multiple listing service.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you can over criteria. Is that even a sentence? I don't think so, but you can be too specific. And I have told people that. I've said, if I put all of those things in for a search, you're not going to find what you want. What are you?
You're going to find one.
Oh, I thought you were checking to see if I could follow your finger with my eyes. What are you doing? He was holding up his one finger, you guys.
I was holding up one finger. Yeah. But it's like,
it's my new glass.
I did this quick search earlier today.
Yeah.
And told the individual, it's like, look, just so you know, based on the criteria you gave me, you have over 200 options.
Now we have
We're
to
going to
narrow it
need
down.
to bring that down a little bit because you can't decipher
Right.
what 200 houses look like. Your point of you're not going to remember 3. So the second sheet that I give to my clients that I use, especially for buyers and first time buyers, is this one that says, okay, look, this is what you told me you wanted. This is what we searched for. Now you tell me if you're seeing that and did we check the boxes? So
So this is now you've met them in person, and
so now I'm out actually looking based on the meeting them, setting up a search, looking at potential properties.
right.
Now, when we go out and look at the house, so that I give them a form so that they can compare side by side what they saw. And I always use the example with my clients. It's like, have you ever watched any HGTV, DIY, any of your house hunter shows?
Yeah.
So they always give the house a nickname.
That's true.
Your job is to give the house a nickname that relates and helps you remember it. I said, because I guarantee you, by the time we see 4 houses today, you're not going to remember which one had what feature. And it will help you to do your own nickname for the house.
I do that at some level. We'll be like house with purple door, house with, round, whatever. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So interesting. And do you feel like what value does that give to you or give to your clients? Do they feel like, wow, no one else ever asked me that? Do you hear that kind of thing?
I think that if there's an agent selling any homes, they ask the basics. I believe, and this is where you and I go back to your personality and my personality, maybe compared to Dan or Ken. I want to know so much more about the people I'm working with that I learn who they are, not just what they want, if that makes sense. And,
yes.
And so if who they are is a dog lover that's going to go walk their dog and they've never lived in Tucson, then I automatically know that they either need to be near a dog park or have trails or whatever, things like that. And that's the relationship piece of this business, right? Versus just, here you go, here's my 3-2. Or
right. And because of your background, because of my background, we immediately look for those things that we can relate to.
Right, we do.
Yeah. In the course of a conversation, Jeannie has said for years, Jeannie, my wife, for first time listeners, has said for years, it's like, yeah, you can carry on a conversation with a rock.
Yeah.
And she's like, you ask questions of people who are standing next to you in line at an amusement park or at the airport, like you're ever going to see them again.
You and I are both so much like that.
And it's like, look, we're here. Let's connect.
This matters.
It does. And then you get on the plane and it's like you're seeing an old friend because they got on before you. And it's like, oh, hey, good to see you.
That is true.
You remember we had that conversation and I just don't see our brothers.
I don't know if Ken would have been like that when he was younger, but Dan never. Dan remembers things. He does. I mean, he remembers things. And he told me a joke the other day on the phone. And I was like, who are you? Like barely. So it was super, super funny. And I'm seeing that little transition in him as he gets older and maybe with the grandkids and stuff like that. And maybe him now almost 40 years in sales, right? So
right. And the other thing I do have to mention, and this is just kind of, again, another entirely random thing. Donna does a great job staying in contact with not only past clients, but with family, far better, family and friends, far better than I think any of us or the rest of us do. And she recently received a video from one of our second cousins, Kirk Schneider, who is shooting video about the museum guy, right? Or something like that.
Museum in this little town in North Carolina. Yeah. Yeah.
And she sent it to me because she's going, Ken and Dan won't get this at all. And I'm watching it going, wow, Kurt, that's really cool. So I even left him a comment on his YouTube.
gonna love
And it's like, this is your other cousin.
who was a mere child when we were at family reunions because
That is correct. It's like if Donna was 14 or 15, that makes me 7 or 8.
and
I was the annoying kid, get out of the hayloft.
right. And Kurt's 2 years older than me. Yeah. So it was funny because I haven't seen him for what we were saying, 45 years. I don't know.
Yeah, 30 years minimum.
30 years minimum. Yeah. So to just get this big, and it also amuses me that he signs his email, your cousin.
So, Kurt, we're going to call you out. We want you to listen to this. We watched your video.
And it was interesting. And honestly, it reminded me of Dad.
Oh, it did. The number of times we traveled across the country where we had to do museum kind of things rather than amusement parks.
And that's what all of a sudden I go from super fun. It's super funny to teary. I told Kurt, I go, we took longer to go everywhere than we ever should have because of Dad making us see the town, whatever, the middles of towns and now
we got to go see the town square and drive by the courthouse. And
yeah. And now I love architecture. And I so appreciated Kurt's showing that little town square in North Carolina and going into that museum and showing things that could easily have been in Ohio, just as well as North Carolina, right? You know, the history. So as we evolve, there is a piece of us that is a little bit like Dad, right? So
a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
All right. Well,
wrap us up, bud.
Wrap it up.
Yeah.
Man, what did I just hear? Was that Robert Palmer? Anyhow, okay. Thanks for listening, joining us today. This has been a little bit more, let's see, functional, operational, how we approach business, trying to create that connection and also understand what our clients are looking for. It is, like we always say, it's a blend of lifestyle along with the real estate that you need in order to create your wonderful life.
Ooh, but bum.
I'm Eric. She's Donna. We are the Real Siblings. And until next time, wow, what do we do now?
You really just messed it up.
I'm Eric.
And I'm Donna.
And we're the Real Siblings.
That was bad, Eric. Oh, practically perfect.